Hey everybody, in this video we are going to look at identifying proportional relationships. So a proportion is just defined as an equation that states that the values of two ratios are equivalent, right? So the ratio 2 to 3 is equivalent to the ratio 4 to 6. Generally speaking, with the proportion, we're going to write it as two equivalent fractions. So let's look at this first example. Determine whether the ratios form a proportion. We have 10 to 40 and 2.5 to 10. So we can look at this 10 40ths. We know that that would simplify to 1/4. Then with 2.5 over 10, okay, maybe there's a couple ways you can simplify this. One would be to easily recognize you can multiply these both by 10 to get 25 hundredths, and then divide those both by 25. And you get 1/4. So this is a proportional relationship. Example B. Now, my hope would be that you have the number sense here to see that 6/4 is greater than 1 whole and 8/12 is less than 1 whole, so you don't even need to do the work. But just for practice, let's look at this. So 6/4, if we were to simplify this, dividing them both by 2, we would get 3/2. Whereas with 8/12, if we divide those both by 4, we would get 2/3. Those are not equivalent, so this is not a proportion. So another way that we can find proportional relationships is using the cross products rule. The cross products rule just says that if A over B is equal to C over D, then A times D equals B times C. Now, that can sound super confusing, but all it's saying is that if one fraction is equivalent to another, or one ratio is equivalent to another, one numerator multiplied by the opposite denominator will be equivalent to that other numerator multiplied by the other denominator. So let's look at this example. We have 2/3 is equal to 8/12, and that's something we know to be true. So just to prove that this cross products rule works, we would do 2 times 12. And 3 times 8. We know that 2 times 12 is 24, and 3 times 8 is 24. So these are equivalent. And this is how the cross products rule works. So we can also use the cross products rule to determine if ratios form a proportion. So for example, we have 6/9 and 12/18. So if 6/9 is equal to 12/18, then 6 times 18 will be equal to 9 times 12. So let's just do some math here. 18 times 6 is 108, and 12 times 9 is also 108. So these ratios are a proportion. Looking at another one, 2/3 and 4/5. So if we do 2 times 5, that should be equal to 3 times 4 if this is a proportion. But we know that 10 does not equal 12, so this would not be a proportion. Alright, finally we're going to tell if this x and y has a proportional relationship. So in other words, is x growing at a ratio proportionate to y? So first we can find this ratio 1/2 to 3 and see if it's equivalent to this one here, 1 to 6. So once again, we can use that cross products rule. 3 times 1 should be equivalent to 1/2 times 6. We know that 3 times 1 obviously is equal to 3, and 1/2 of 6 is 3. So these two are proportionate. So now let's see if 3/2 over 9 is also equivalent to 1 over 6. We know that 9 times 1 is 9. And that must be equivalent to 3/2 times 6, which would be 18 over 2, which is 9. So this is proportionate as well. And finally, we have 1/6, which should be equal to 2/12. We already know that those are equivalent, but again, just to use that cross products rule, 6 times 2 should be equivalent to 1 times 12. And of course, both of those equal 12. So this ratio, this relationship between x and y is proportional.